this morning. Merci à tout le monde. I want to begin by acknowledging that we're here on the traditional territory of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish First Nations. Hajka, thank you. We are here and acknowledge the generosity of the work together that we do with First Nations. I'm here today with our stunning array of friends, candidates, and extraordinary Canadians who are standing with me to give Canadians something they are thirsting for. Honest, clear answers to the questions that are on their minds. Clear action for the Canada we want. A Canada that works together. We're the first party in Canada in this very long election campaign to release our full platform, which is fully costed, and all the information in detail you can find on our website. And by the way, all the photos here came from real live Green supporters. There are no exotic species imported from websites in other countries. Je suis vraiment fière d'être la première partie nationale dans cette campagne très longue d'annonces, une plateforme entière avec un budget clair. I'm very proud of this platform. We have what Canadians want. We have a program that speaks to the needs of the 21st century. We're talking about the things that have been absent in this campaign from the other parties. How to protect our universal health care system and how to expand it to make it better for the 21st century. We already announced that we would bring in pharmacare to reduce the cost of prescription drugs and ensure that no Canadian goes without medicine they need. Today we announce the first step to extend dental care to the Canadian healthcare system. To bring in dental coverage for those low income under 18 years old. It's very expensive, but we costed everything, and we know it's time to start bringing forward the big ideas and the new ideas. Yeah. You know, I'll let the other parties squabble over the turf at the cutting edge of the status quo. We're ready to come forward with big ideas, with new ideas. I'm tired, and I know Canadians are tired, of campaign strategies and little announcements here and there that seem designed to bribe us with our own money. Yeah. To tell us that we'll all be better off if they appeal to this self-interest or that narrow self-interest, utilizing not the best of what's in us, our capacity to work together, to study the evidence and develop the best possible policies to meet the best interests, the highest purpose, the common good of Canadians, but to instead, through low cunning and cheap tricks, continue to manipulate public opinion. Canadians are sick of being treated as though we can be conned. This election reminds me of a seedy sideshow, a carny sideshow. And what we want to offer Canadians is the real deal. Canadian members of Parliament who are more committed to Canada than to their own party, more committed to a Parliament that functions well than to short-term partisan advantage. We must change the climate in Parliament to be more respectful. And as nearly everyone, I think, is now convinced, this is going to be a minority parliament. The missing ingredient to make a minority parliament work is enough Green members of Parliament to reach out across party lines and say, where do we agree? How do we get it done? So if you want new ideas, Don't go to the old parties. It's time for change. Notre plateforme démontre que le Parti vert est prêt et le Parti vert, c'est le parti des grandes idées. Le Parti vert fera de préparer pour le 21e siècle avec des idées qui en ont besoin. On doit faire face à les vrais défis actuellement. On doit faire face aux menaces comme changement climatique. On doit agir maintenant. C'est clair que le temps presse, mais nous avons le temps pour prendre les programmes, mettre sur pied les politiques pour montrer que c'est vraiment possible d'arrêter une récession et en même temps arrêter la croissance de gaz à effet de serre. We can do it. Ensemble, nous pouvons changer le climat dans la Chambre des communes et en même temps, on doit faire face à les mêmes défis et faire un changement profond dans notre économie vers une économie durable et verte. So in telling you a bit more about our platform, one of our big ideas, we've announced this before, but I think it bears repetition. Canada as a federation needs a new way of making decisions. Now, it's true that Stephen Harper has abandoned the old ways of making decisions, such as First Ministers' meetings, consultations of any kind, working across party lines ever. But even before Stephen Harper basically committed acts of serial vandalism to virtually every area of public policy, we did need to revisit how we function as an economic union, how we function as a political union. The Green Party is advancing the idea of a Council of Canadian Governments that will make the decisions we need by setting the goals we need. You know, Canada is the only country in the OECD, the industrialized world, not to have any energy policy, not to have any national transportation policy, not to have any national housing policy, not to have any national cultural policy. Do you spot a trend here? We've been operating through ad hocery, and we've been operating under an elected dictatorship of one-man rule. No wonder we feel like the wheels are falling off the bus in this country. We have to get ourselves to establish good national goals. You need all decision makers, all orders of government at the same table. So we will expand on the First Ministers' meeting concept, because it was a good idea. We will have Council of Canadian Governments with the federal government, with provincial territorial governments, with a space at the table for key decision makers representing the municipalities and local governments of Canada, and a seat at the table for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. For every decision. At that table, we can work together. We can figure out how to have a national energy strategy for Canada. When we start thinking like a country again, we can make sure that no region is disadvantaged as we work together to create jobs from a sustainable economy, create jobs in a climate that understands, a political climate that understands that we must get off fossil fuels by mid-century. No later. Our Council of Canadian Governments would share the big picture ideas and the goals, and then each level of government, each order of government would go back to their own jurisdictions, their own abilities to raise money. It's at the Council of Canadian Governments that we can eliminate poverty in this country by bringing in a guaranteed livable income for all. So our platform is organized around 4 themes: a sustainable economy, strong communities, good government, and climate action. And within these four categories, you will find a vision that inspires you. You will find a reason to get interested in this election campaign by wondering, when will the other parties respond to this great idea the Green Party has brought forward? When will we hear other parties talk about eliminating poverty, reducing the debt burden on young students and their families, making tuition available through making education available by abolishing tuition by the year 2020? We want to return to the country we once were. I've been working to try to get Syrian refugees into Canada for years now, one at a time. I've raised it in Parliament for years. I've gone to ministers of immigration, two of them, Jason Kenney and Chris Alexander. I've managed to get some people in, but I can tell you, the system that's now in place for refugees in Canada is not a welcome mat. It's a locked door, and you need to find the secret code to get through. And it is not easy. And it's not that it's difficult to get through because of red tape. It's difficult to get through because by design, when I talk about the serial vandalism to Canadian public policy, I'm talking about what's happened to Statistics Canada, what's happened to environmental laws and regulations, what's happened to criminal justice, and what's happened to immigration and refugee policy. One of the first laws I fought as a member of Parliament was the one that says that if a boatload of refugees comes to this shore, they are considered irregular entry and everyone on board is detained in jail for a year. Including anyone over 16 is automatically in jail, and the younger children, they can decide whether to put them into social services or let them stay with their families in jail for a year. That's our law right now. We've changed our approach to immigration and refugee policy so fundamentally that Canadians won't recognize themselves when they actually begin to look at what's been forced through Parliament in the last 4 years. So our platform includes some good news. We have to repeal Bill C-51. We have to repeal the unconstitutional laws, and there's a whack of them. Let's save the courts and lawyers and public interest groups a lot of money by acknowledging right now that the so-called Safer Communities Act, to make it impossible to have harm reduction in-site facilities, needs to be repealed. It's unconstitutional. The new law to deal with sex trade workers needs to be repealed. It's unconstitutional. Let's repeal all the laws that treat Canadian citizens in two categories. Let's give Canadian citizenship the meaning it's always had. We are committed. Nous sommes engagés toutes et tous ici, cette équipe ici au Québec, avec Daniel Green, J.C. Lauzon, José Núñez Melo, André Bellil, puis à l'Acadie, avec Dominique Brault, puis Mary-Lou Babineau à Fredericton. Mary-Lou in Fredericton is going to win that seat because David Bloom led the way. We are from coast to coast. All of us are united. Bright, intelligent people who have never in their lives imagined that they were going to go into politics. Am I right, all of you? We are not about politics. We are about democracy. And British Columbia is going to lead the way. We are united as no party has ever been united. We are united because we love this country. We have faith in each other. And in this election, we're going to take back our country. Thank you. have to say, I just had a high five with my friend Paul Manley back there, in case you didn't know. In Nanaimo yesterday, we had a little town hall meeting and a rally. 900 people showed up. So I'll now open the floor. Je suis disponible pour les questions en anglais et en français. Please, I know we have a lot of supporters in the room, but it'll be questions from journalists, and I'm hoping I can answer any questions you have.
Can you talk about, Ms. May, please talk about how you would pay for the things that you're offering?
Yes, unfortunately, we have a full budget. Now, it's a summary budget overview at the back of the platform. We actually run a balanced budget, which actually I wasn't sure. We work with a team of economists, and we have some third-party evaluators available to you if you want to contact economists who've looked at our platform. It is a balanced budget. How did we do that and still include the promises that we've made? Is through some adjustments to the tax system. Of course, we've eliminated subsidies to fossil fuels. We've eliminated subsidies to genetically modified foods. We're going after, Canadian Revenue Agency has been criticized in a couple of the Auditor General's recent reports in not using the software they have to identify where big money is hiding. They've been specializing in going after the little guy. I represent a lot of them out of my riding office trying to help them. So we're going after offshore tax havens. We're going after and particularly in terms of the changes to the tax system, we do want to keep taxes low for small business. So they'll be at 9%. But because we do want to be understood to be the party for small business, the party of small business. Small business is the biggest employer in Canada, and we want to help small business. Our biggest change to the tax regime is going to increase the taxes on large corporations. Large corporations in Canada, the corporate tax rate at the federal level is the lowest in the industrialized world at 15%, or half of what these corporations pay in the United States. We'd like to ratchet it back up to what it was not that long ago. 2009, the corporate tax rate was 19%. By the way, in the year 2000, the corporate tax rate was 28%. So talking about a corporate tax rate of 19% for large corporations is not going to lead to flight of capital. It's still competitive within the industrialized world and within the OECD, but it does provide another $7.5 billion a year in revenue to the federal treasury. We also obtain, and this is a platform commitment of the Green Party of many years, which is to legalize cannabis. What I'd failed to recognize until our economists went and looked at the most recent studies is that by the time you legalize and tax and regulate cannabis sales, the taxation is quite a good revenue stream. So I know. Apparently this stuff grows well in Canada. It's a very large illegal economy. We'd like to make it legal and tax it. Our budget does balance, and again, although this is just a budget overview that's included in this book, the full breakout of exactly how we pay for the promises, what we're putting into programs, the specifics, like $1 billion a year into community and environmental youth employment core, so that we can get our kids back to work. There's a lot of detail in here, and I'm skimming the surface. I'm very, very proud of the work that was done. This is a grassroots party. It was a lot of work from a lot of volunteers working hard. I have to give a specific tribute to one of my friends who currently is the Green Party candidate against a Conservative, a former member of cabinet, of course, currently incumbent, Pierre Poilievre. The Green Party candidate running against Pierre Poilievre is Deborah Coyne, and she and I worked really hard on the nitty-gritty and policy work of this platform, and I want to thank Deborah for all her work and wish her well. I know Canadians in places that never thought they'd care about what happened for Deborah Coyne as Green Party candidate. As soon as you realize she's running against Pierre Poilievre, I know a lot of people will want to go to her website right away and hit the donate button questions.
Ms. May, can I ask you about just the budget assumptions?
Yeah.
Here? Am I correct in understanding that your party is assuming that there is a budget surplus right now, not a deficit?
No, we're assuming there is a deficit right now. And if I just eliminated when we were putting this together, we left out the column for 2014, 2015. We're assuming a deficit in this year, but we thought it would confuse some of the people who just look at it fast and think we were running the deficit. Stephen Harper is running a deficit. We do not expect a balanced budget this year.
But you do expect one next year?
Yes. With Green Party policies, we expect a surplus, a balanced budget next year, and we pay down the debt faster than the Harper Conservatives, who are a strange brand of conservatives who've actually increased the federal debt. Of the $613 billion federal debt at the moment, 24% of it occurred under Stephen Harper's watch, which is quite extraordinary. So we want to pay down the debt. We don't think deficit is, in the big scheme of things, it's not an ideological question for us. We'd like to run balanced budgets. We think that's fiscally appropriate. If the recession worsened and we needed a bigger stimulus than what's in here, we're not ideologically opposed to a small deficit. But as it turns out, our budget is balanced. We do put substantial money into investments in municipal infrastructure by taking 1 point of GST, which is $6.4 billion a year, in perpetuity till we get rid of the infrastructure deficit. So our budget assumptions are based on the real world of the moment, which is we're in a recession. Stephen Harper made an ill-advised political promise in 2011 that the budget would be balanced by 2015. He's been fiddling with the bookwork. I mean, really, talk about carny, cheap tricks. Now you see it, now you don't. Moving the budget to April 21st was about being able to book the sale of GM shares to this year instead of last year to make the budget look balanced. It doesn't have any impact whatsoever on economic health of Canadians. It just happens to be a way of making it look like the budget is balanced, when in fact, given the plummeting price of a barrel of oil, as we all know, there are sectors in Canada that are now doing well. Those very sectors that did badly when Stephen Harper decided that the Canadian economy overall would be healthier if he skewed it to only one sector. So the reason that the sectors like manufacturing, the sectors that Stephen Harper now refers to as, oh, well, don't worry, it's only the oil patch that's doing badly. Look at the rest of the Canadian economy. Yes, Stephen Harper, look at the rest of the Canadian economy that you have ignored for 9 years. Look at the rest of the Canadian economy. Merci.
Est-ce que votre plateforme, votre budget, ça a pour but d'aller solidifier la base ou d'aller chercher de nouveaux appuis ailleurs?
Donc, je pense que maintenant, nous avons un budget qui était très stable. C'est clair, nous avons les revenus pour toutes les dépenses. À notre avis, nous avons maintenant un bon besoin de stimulation d'économie parce que c'est clair que maintenant nous sommes dans une récession. C'est très important de mettre sur pied les politiques pour éviter une récession plus grave. Mais à ce moment, je pense que ce budget maintenant, je suis fière de ce budget. Je pense que c'est clair aussi avec la plateforme que nous pouvons faire les grands changements dans l'économie et en même temps agir contre les gaz à effet de serre.
Oui. Ça s'adresse à ceux qui supportent déjà votre parti, à de nouveaux électeurs.
Pas de mots. Absolument. C'est une plateforme pour tous les Canadiens et Canadiennes, pour tous les Québécois et Québécoises, particulièrement les gens qui n'ont jamais pensé qu'ils vont voter vert. C'est pour tout le monde, et particulièrement pour les 40% des Canadiens et Canadiennes qui ne votaient pas dans les dernières élections de 2011 et 2008, les 40% des électeurs qui ont fait une décision de ne voter pas parce que les autres partis offrent rien. Maintenant, nous avons, j'espère, fait quelque chose pour faire dans le bien-être des choses qu'on a besoin.
Madame May, dans votre programme, renverser C51, rétablir le courrier à domicile, instaurer un salaire minimum fédéral à 15 $, ça ressemble à ce que propose le NPD. Alors pourquoi un électeur qui voit votre programme et certaines promesses qui ressemblent à celles du NPD voterait pour vous et non pas pour le NPD à ces élections générales.
Oui, ce n'est pas. Il y a aussi les idées qui semblent les idées libéraux, dans les questions des grands défis au Canada, les questions de logement, les questions de la sécurité de santé publique. Je suis certain que notre plateforme est plus forte, avec plus de détails, qui offre plus que les autres. Et maintenant, c'est la plus grande différence entre le Parti vert et les autres partis, comme les NPD ou le Parti libéral ou les conservateurs. C'est la qualité des candidats comme ici et la réalité, le politique, l'engagement profond que tous les candidats ici qui seront les députés à l'avenir, toujours travailler pour leurs électeurs, toujours travailler pour leur circonscription et pas pour le leader du Parti vert. Ça, c'est la plus grande différence. Encore?
Pour les prochaines années, vous prévoyez des surplus. Comment vous allez financer vos promesses? Je vois qu'il y a une hausse de l'impôt sur les grandes entreprises à 19 %. Est-ce que c'est suffisant, ça?
Oui, aussi avec les autres changements pour l'élimination de subventions vers les industries qui sont les grands pollueurs. Alors, on doit faire les changements dans le système fiscal, mais avec l'avis d'économistes, avec le travail de toute notre équipe, je suis certain que c'est possible d'avoir un surplus dans l'avenir, mais il y a les changements dans la situation actuelle. On doit faire les mesures différentes. Toujours, le Parti vert est vraiment pratique. Nous sommes pragmatiques. Ça, c'est aussi une différence. Le Parti vert, ce n'est pas un parti idéologique et rigide. Merci.
Oil sands subsidies.
Yes. All fossil fuel subsidies.
Okay. Can you?
That would include natural gas.
Okay. Can you expand on what that would mean in terms of dollars, and also the NDP are promising a similar pledge? Can you outline how your oil sands policy might be different from the other?
Well, okay, Michaela. First of all, we eliminate fossil fuel subsidies. Now, there are a lot. If you look at things like the International Monetary Fund, they say Canada's fossil fuel subsidies are in the category of $35 billion. We don't use that figure because that's actually looking at things that are externalities. We're looking at the actual books of Canada. So we're probably avoiding about, I need to go back and double check, but I think it's about $1.3 billion a year in fossil fuel subsidies in the oil sands alone. We're also eliminating the subsidies that Stephen Harper just announced in the 2015 budget, which is ironic because Stephen Harper actually pledged at various G20 summits to eliminate fossil fuel subsidies in Canada. And actually, when I raised it in the Maclean's debate, he said they'd already done that. But in fact, we're still subsidizing fossil fuels, and in case he didn't know, liquefied natural gas is a fossil fuel, and they just announced a whole new subsidy for that. We also, so how does it differ from the NDP? We believe that we have to arrest the growth in oil sands. We are currently at about 2 million barrels of bitumen a day, and we know that the Alberta government is still hoping to grow to additional levels of production. We oppose, as a matter of principle and practical economic position, as well as environmental concerns, we oppose any shipment in any pipeline, whether heading west, south, or east, of bitumen unprocessed mixed with diluent headed for tankers for our coastlines. So that's a very clear. And again, the part of our, we also want to, in the portion of our platform that deals with climate and energy, we want to end thermal coal exports. I haven't mentioned that here yet today. C'est très important d'avoir plus de sécurité pour le transport par ferroviaire, pour les produits dangereux. It's very important to have additional rail safety for the transport of hazardous goods. But we really are, as a party, and I can't tell you as an individual, I think I actually probably have told you this before, you in particular told before, the idea of the day after the election, is what I live for. That day after the election when we can stop campaigning, roll up our sleeves, and get to work across party lines to ensure that at the deadline negotiations for a new climate treaty, Canada is in the room, Canada is in the lead, and the rest of the world is grateful for our work when we end up achieving the treaty the world needs. Les négociations vont commencer le 30 novembre, seulement 40 jours après les élections. C'est vraiment, un temps presse, c'est vraiment un défi presque impossible. Mais pour les Verts, toujours, nous pensons qu'il n'y a rien qui est impossible. C'est seulement plus difficile que les autres. So what we need to do is, pour les négociations des Nations Unies, de 21e conférence des partis à Paris, on doit préparer, pas seulement les Verts, on doit préparer la délégation du Canada. On doit préparer les nouveaux cibles, les nouveaux bouts, un nouvel programme pour Canada, pour les négociations, pour un nouveau traité qui va réussir. Yes.
I hope you will be able to investigate the reasons why some provinces are considered to be have-not. Because in Ontario, I heard most of the high schools have their swimming pools. We don't.
Well, I will say that I don't think that I will never. Here's the thing about Greens. I don't want to see any part of this country turned against another part of this country. I don't want to hear that our young people resent old people. It's not true. I don't want seniors to feel they're ignored. I don't want Nova Scotians to think that Albertans have it better. I want Canadians to take care of each other and reach out our hands to everyone who needs help. We're one country. We're one incredible country, from coast to coast to coast. There's nothing we can't do if we work together. And one of the things that's in our deep background policy papers is that we need to sit down in the Council of Canadian Governments and actually rework the question of how much federal provincial transfers, how much do we need to make sure we spend federally to assist provinces, so that there's no part of this country where a woman who is waiting for a mammogram has to wait longer than in another part of the country. We should have no part of this country where the quality of health care, the excellence of education, or the safety of our fundamental infrastructure. We should have no part of Canada that is worse off than another sheerly through neglect. We can sit at the same table and figure this out because we're smart. We know how to do this. Every single level, order of government. I work with mayors all the time. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities, the mayors in this country and local government are miles ahead of the federal government in dealing with climate change. Miles ahead. But if we could just sit down together, end the stupidity. Oh my gosh, how I hate the stupidity of hyper-partisan sniping. The nonsense, day to day, of trying to use the public space where there should be respectful discourse and turn it into some sort of mud wrestling match. We need to live up to the aspirations of Canadians. We need to live up to the aspirations to be the best country we can be, the best people we can be, the best neighbors we can be, the best global peacekeepers, the country that sets the standard. We can be. We know who we are. We can be Canada again. Yes. I I noticed, by the way, that last question may not have been from an official member of the journal, the media corps that's here. So I want to check before going to questions from other members of the public. The other yes, go ahead.
Yeah, well, you spoke about a coalition government. If we have a coalition government or a minority government, and if the vote comes down to you, how will you use that?
Well, now there's several ways of cooperating in a minority parliament. My personal favorite, because I think Greens will be more effective by doing this, is not to join into a formal coalition. I would love to help be a promoter, a matchmaker, someone who, with a strong core of Greens, encourages the Liberals and the New Democrats to form a coalition. I think that would be very healthy. We would like to sit in opposition in a responsible parliament, which means our job is to hold government accountable. We would like to be there to say, for instance, we'll not bring down this particular government, whether it's led by NDP or led by Liberals. We won't bring down that government if, and this is the important thing, if they're willing to change their policies enough to defend our coastline from tankers loaded with bitumen and diluent. If they're going to really bring in proportional representation and get rid of first past the post. If we really repeal C-51 immediately. And if they agree to work with Greens to restore parliamentary democracy, fundamental principles of the supremacy of Parliament, that Parliament controls the public purse, that parliamentary committees actually get to study legislation, listen to witnesses, ungag the scientists, and actually do the work needs to be done. Our budget, by the way, saves $5 million a year by cutting the Prime Minister's office budget in half. We need to bring in laws that require a vote in Parliament before prorogation. We need to eliminate the use of omnibus budget bills. So we'll be working across party lines. Those are our big goals. We have to make sure we reduce the illegitimate power of the Prime Minister's office and have every single one of these wonderful members of Parliament working as we should be in Parliament. Well, of course, all the Greens will be, but every member of Parliament in our system of government, every member of Parliament is equal. The Prime Minister is merely first among equals. Most Prime Ministers in this country's history never thought it was a full-time job. Most previous Prime Ministers up to 1970 were also Minister of Justice, sometimes Minister of Foreign Affairs. I could go on too long. Here's the thing. A minority parliament can be a 4-year period of respectful, deliberative, productive work for the people of Canada, or it can be a year or two of hyper-partisan squabbling and bickering. The difference between those choices is how many Green members of Parliament are elected to work across party lines to give Canadians the government they want.
You'll pick and choose by item, by issue.
I think that's the best way. You know, and one of the reasons I say that is, I was very much in support of the efforts that were made in November of 2008 to create a coalition. I think that's appropriate in our system of government. So it's not that I oppose coalitions. To be really candid with you, the Greens are not new to government. We're just new to government in Canada. Yeah. And I have a lot of colleagues who have been as ministers of different portfolios in governments around the world, Minister of Development or Minister of Environment. And if there's a fractious situation within that government, Greens we have this annoying habit of standing on principle. So it means we pull out of that government. So the Minister of Development for France left François Hollande's coalition. The Minister of Environment for Finland left that coalition, all within the last couple of years. The minister right now, the Deputy Prime Minister of Sweden, is Ulla Thomson, who is a friend of mine, who also negotiates on behalf of Sweden in global climate meetings. So I won't go on about all my personal awareness of what happens in coalition governments for Greens, but I would not want to destabilize a productive parliament if every single decision taken by a different party that we're prepared to buck up on big principles, if we were then neutered and silenced when it came time to say, wait a minute, you're not going to go bombing another country again, not without figuring out if you're going to do more harm than good, which is what Canada did in Libya. We did a lot more harm than good. So we have to be free as members of parliament to speak for our constituents. And that's why I think it's in the best interest of everyone if we try to replicate the minority parliament of the late 1960s, when Lester B. Pearson was prime minister with a minority, John Diefenbaker was his leader of the official opposition, and a small group of members of parliament that no one took very seriously, because there were only 14 of them, led by Tommy Douglas and David Lewis, decided to make sure we had universal health care, we had Canada Pension Plan, we had unemployment insurance, we got student loans without interest payments, we even got the flag. That was the minority parliament that was not a coalition. I don't know the details of how they worked that out, but I bet anything that there was a lot of moment to moment, we won't let your government fall, but we want universal health care for Canadians. And to this day, Canadians thank Tommy Douglas for that, but we also thank Lester B. Pearson. Members of the public, let me just check if there are any other journalists in the room who have questions. Oh yes, of course, sorry.
Just one more. Just from your platform, from your statements, it's apparent that you're trying to appeal to a wider range of voters. I was tracking social media through the discussion, but I still heard people bringing up again niche party, single issue party. I want to give you, explain, or what can you say to these people that still put the Green Party as a niche party, or see them as the true hugging image?
This broad platform with a comprehensive approach to issues isn't something new in 2015. We've brought this forward in every election campaign we've ever run. And for years, I say to people, look, we're not a one-issue party, and we sure aren't a one-person party. But if they're going to push me on it, I'll admit increasingly to feeling that we're a one-issue party, because the issue is democracy. At my candidates up here with me, I want to introduce every single one of them to you. I don't know if Stephen Harper has moments like this where you just feel like, I love you guys so much. I'm so honored that you're running for the Green Party. As I said, you have no idea how long it took me to talk Claire Martin into running. Was also very difficult to convince. Fran Hunt-Janucci gave me a flat no. Not running. So did Francis Littman. So did Paul Manley. That is one hard man to nail down. I tell you, this crew, Lynn Cornby, I have to say. I said, I'd be so honored if you'd run for us. Would you think about it? She said, yes. Everybody else. You have no idea to get Gord Miller. I don't know if Gord Miller was for 14 years the Commissioner for the Environment for the province of Ontario. He's the Green Party candidate in Guelph. Yes. And boy, when I go over the years it took me to convince Bruce Heyer, Thunder Bay Superior North, to be the second Green MP in the House of Commons with me, these are people of really some significant levels of sales resistance. However, when you put it to them like this, your integrity will never be compromised. You speak for yourself, you speak for your constituents. And they sign a pledge of respectful conduct, of never heckling in Parliament, of being accountable and transparent, and all our expenses are online. All the things that we believe Canadians want to see in their representative. We want Canadian voters, after electing a Green MP, to feel for the first time in their life a sense of pride when they see their member of Parliament on the television news. A sense of, oh, I'm so glad Joanne is out there speaking for me. I'm so glad that Frances Littman is my MP. I'm so glad, oh my gosh, Brenda Sayers' voice in the House of Commons. Brenda led the charge, if you don't know, on behalf of the Hoopachuset First Nation in the fight to stop the Canada-China Investment Treaty. We are an extraordinary, this group, and the ones you can't see. That's, by the way, in this platform, one of the other things I mentioned as sort of a joke at the beginning, there are no Atlantic salmon leaping upstream. But what you do see, from the UK. But these are real life supporters. All the photos are our candidates talking to real Canadians. There's nothing staged in here. It's just like the Green Party. It's real people who care about real issues, and what you see is what you get. If we make mistakes, it's just because we're human. But what we care about is you. We care about saving this country. We care about repairing all the damage that Stephen Harper has done in the last 9 years and putting things back together even better than they were before. We care about and we love this country, and I think I should probably find out from Dan if I'm supposed to stop talking yet, or what, because I could tell, I really do love talking to you. But we love this country. Questions from journalists. Est-ce qu'il y a les autres questions des journalistes? And if not, I will turn to members of the audience who are here who might have questions. And I wish I could, I'm blinded by lights. I know I see a lot of people around here, and I really appreciate you coming out this morning. Any other questions from members of the press corps? Okay. Thank you all for being here. We'll all be available for questions later. If anyone's in a hurry and you need any of us, make sure you let Dan know and he'll grab us. But for now, I'd like to turn over the floor to the questions from people in the room as Greens. And I saw a hand go up over here, and the young man in the front row. We'll go with you and then we'll go to you. Okay.
Ms. May, I've read a lot of articles this week, well, two, one in Rabble, one in the Tyee, saying that the Greens should just back down in certain ridings because of NDP candidates, and it's as if the Greens shouldn't run strong candidates in certain ridings because they have a good chance of winning.
I know, aren't we awful? Really? We want to win. We want to look. The reality is that particularly a lot of the more hysterical, desperate attacks are occurring on Vancouver Island. The irony is, of course, that on Vancouver Island is the place where there is no chance of a Conservative candidate winning. That's the reality of Vancouver Island. The recent Insight West poll confirms what we're feeling on the doorstep, which is that, basically on Vancouver Island, Conservative support is 15%. Liberal support is 15%. Green support on Vancouver Island is 32%. As we demonstrate that we're closer and closer and closer to actually electing Green MPs, and we're not against working with the NDP. By the way, one of the reasons that a Green MP is far more valuable to Canadians who are worried about this ABC thing, we're far more valuable than an NDP or a Liberal, and this is why. We've seen in 2006, when Stephen Harper first had a few more seats than the other parties, the Liberals and the NDP stepped back, didn't make that essential phone call. They should have picked up the phone and called the Governor General and said, Stephen Harper doesn't have the confidence of the House. He has only the support of a minority of Canadians, and we want time to talk to each other and put together a more democratically derived government with MPs who all support climate action to different degrees. But instead, they sat back because they operate top down. Every single member of the other parties votes the way they're told, and stepped back. I will not step back. That essential step, if Stephen Harper should by some fluke improve the standings of where he is in the polls right now, if Conservatives should happen to have a few more seats than the NDP or the Liberals, that does not mean Stephen Harper has won the election. Right. This is not a presidential system. No. We are electing individual members of Parliament, and it's up for us in a minority Parliament to figure out how can we best govern? How can we put together the government that best represents what Canadians want? We will never step back and allow a minority Conservative government to take hold. The other parties do because they think, we got to get ready for the next election. Our war chest is empty. We can't go to the polls yet. We've got to raise more money. We're going to figure out how to fight each other more on the opposition benches. You know, in the 4 years I've been in Parliament, I've seen more attacks of Liberals versus NDP. If we could have ever cooperated in the opposition benches, we could have done a much better job in holding the Conservatives to account. So partisanship is a real problem. We will not allow a Conservative minority under Stephen Harper to go forward without a challenge that we call the Governor General and we ask for time to talk to the other parties. Ask the other party leaders if they're prepared to do that. Tell Bill Thielman and his partisan screed to actually think through what's in the best interest of this country. Joanne Roberts is in the best interest of this country for Victoria.
Yes, Ms. May, what are your thoughts on the TPP agreement?
The Trans-Pacific Partnership, I should introduce that Paul Manley here behind me, who is not only a documentary filmmaker, but former member of the Board of Council of Canadians and has worked on a lot of these agreements, is the Green Party critic on trade and investment. We did a press conference yesterday on the steps we will take in Parliament to protect Canada from the single biggest sellout of our sovereignty in the history of this country, which was Harper's ratifying the Canada-China Investment Treaty. But we also are the only party prepared to fight the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, prepared to fight the CETA agreement. We are the only party in Parliament, two of us, just Bruce Heyer and me, we were the only two votes against the Canada-Korea trade deal, which fundamentally violated several different parts of NDP policy of the past. But we've been clear, we want trade, but only trade that's in the best interest of Canada, that's fair, and that does not surrender our national sovereignty to global corporate rule. My daughter's going to hate me for this. Kate, would you just come for a second? I want to introduce my number one support team member. Not that I don't love Jamie and Alicia, but I just, I see Anthony and Tom in front, so I thought, Kate, you want to come here, sweetheart? She's going to hate me for this forever. But I want you to meet my daughter, Kate. Before they find other ways of getting out the hook. That's a wrap, folks. Thanks for coming. We are going to take back